An hour and 45 minutes later, and a pickup truck turns up, and the guy's like, "You two going to here, right?" And we're like, "Yeah." And he's like, "Hop in." And this is just a pickup truck, and the guy's sitting in the front. There's no passenger seat, so we're in the cab. So we get up in the back of this open pickup truck, sitting in the cab with this guy's son.
Where is the best place that YouTube has ever taken you? Somewhere perhaps that you wouldn't have visited?
That's a good question. Alaska was actually a sponsored video. It ended up not really being. It was essentially a cruise company that did excursion packages. And rather than us do the cruise, they just sent us out to Alaska to do just the excursion and basically have the excursion and make videos about it. But it was good because it meant we actually got to do way more of Alaska, than we would have done if you go there, because it's so vast. You really unless you do a big road trip over the course of weeks or a month, you're only really going to see certain parts of it, especially if you go, depending on the time of year you go. But we got, a good 10 days of just blitz. Here's loads of cool stuff. So that would be up there. But I would say other than that, I don't think I'd ever go to Brunei without traveling. And that's a really interesting country. Yeah,
what is it about it that makes it so interesting?
It's part of the island of Borneo, which the majority of is owned by Malaysia. Part of it is owned by Indonesia, and the other part is this principality of Brunei. And it's very, how do I say this politically correctly, but it's like a religious dictatorship. There's the Sultan, which is a very religious figure who runs it. He's the big boss man of Brunei. But everyone looks at him very fondly. And there's a lot of negative stories, but what we learned from people who live there is he is like a pop star as well as the country's leader. Okay. And people queue up in their hundreds of thousands for this one point in a year to get the chance to shake his hand.
Wow.
It's quite interesting. And there's a lot of negative stories with Brunei based on, within that, there is obviously certain restrictions that are put on the people that live there, but they don't necessarily know any better because that's all they know. But from a Western point of view, you'd say that you don't have access to a lot of the things that we do. But at the same time, they're quite good at reinvesting. And because at one point he was the richest man in the world, the Sultan of Brunei, there's a lot of investment in the people. So there's quite a good low minimum wage, quite a good standard of living. And there's a lot of investment in communities, which is nice. But it's such a very weird place because you go there and everything is so heavily controlled by this one person or this one kind of body that we had instances. I went with another YouTuber, Ed in Edinger, and we had a couple of examples where you go to somewhere and be like, "Oh, this is the Grand Palace, where you can. This happens here. This amazing thing. The guy lives here. It's the most breathtaking place in all of Brunei, but you can only film it from this side of the fence."
Okay.
That sort of thing. Quite weird. Yeah, you can film that, but you can't. We'll take you to this amazing adventure park. It's a really cool theme park with amazing roller coasters, but it's been closed for 10 years. That sort of almost like North Korea-esque, vibes. But at the same time, it has incredible natural beauty. We did as two YouTubers, we basically were sent there and just left our own devices in this really quite odd countries based on what we were used to. Again, comfort zone, so I was loving it. Outside of the comfort zone. But there's one point where we were in a ferry taxi, which was the tiniest little boat, basically the size of this room, the boat, with about 20 people on it. Half the people had kittens and cats in little boxes. Strange. And then it went completely through the jungle.
Wow.
To a place where we'd get out of the boat, get transferred into a little canoe with a little motor on the back, and sent another about 10 miles upriver to a place where we were staying. But all of it was just get in there and you'll be all right. No, just get in that boat. Wait here for 10 minutes and then another boat will turn up and you'll be all right. And it's okay, we'll try it out. But they're the best experiences. The big trip in Asia was very similar. Two guys not really knowing anything about traveling, and at least I had the experience from that in later countries. But one thing that strikes me, please, I apologize if I go off in segues here.
It's great.
One experience that I often reflect on, which was Ollie and I we were going from Bangkok down to the Thai islands, and there's a ferry port that takes you to most of the Thai islands. It's about 12-hour bus journey from Bangkok. We did an overnight journey. It took us part of the way, and on that part of the way, the overnight bit, we were like waking up to having the people behind us with their hands in our bags, like trying to steal our things. And we'd heard the stories, like we'd heard like, you have to be careful when you're traveling because, you know, don't put anything valuable in the hold because there's literally people sitting in the hold who go through all the luggage while you're on the bus. And loads of people have their cameras stolen and memory cards, which is just like, it seems trivial. It's just, you know, it's material goods. But when someone steals a memory card that's pretty useless to them, but it's got 2,000 photos of your trip on it, you know?
Yeah.
And for us, that was pretty disastrous because that would have been what we were being paid to do. So we had this uncomfortable like overnight bus where we didn't really sleep because we were a bit worried about, you know, this stuff. And then we just got dropped off, just us two. Now this was a coach full of people, mostly locals. Ollie and I got dropped off about halfway, 3/4 of the way there, off this coach on the middle of a highway, just nothing around, next to a garage, a car garage. And they said, this coach isn't going there anymore. All these locals are going somewhere else. So another one's going to come pick you up from here. So just wait here and it should be here in a minute. We're like, okay, we haven't really got a choice here. So, okay.
Yeah.
So we got off the bus and we're waiting in this garage. And 5 minutes passed, 10 minutes passed, half an hour passed, 45 minutes passed. Like an hour and a half later, we're like, what do we do at this point? We're asking the guys in the mechanic in the most like broken tie you can imagine. And they have like no English. So we're basically like almost drawing pictures of buses and being like to this place. And they basically say, don't worry, it'll turn up. So we get the impression that this is a fairly regular thing. So we trust them. An hour and 45 minutes later, and a pickup truck turns up. And the guy's like, you two are going to here, right? And we're like, yeah. And he's like, hop in. And this is just a pickup truck. And the guy's sitting in the front. There's no passenger seat. So we're in the cab. So we get up in the back of this open pickup truck, sitting in the cab with this guy's son. And we're driving another hour and a half to get to our destination. And so we've got some amazing pictures of the two of us and this guy's son just like pulling faces at each other and stuff. But it was just like, even though like saying that now, it sounds like such a sketchy situation. It could have gone wrong in so many ways. Like at the time, it felt so normal.
Yeah.
And I can't stress how strange that is to say that.